Alright, budget magic time. Playing some blue-white lands. In standard. We gotta mulligan this, see if we can find some spirits. This is much better. Lands are very tapped, but that's alright. Sacred Foundry for our opponent. Tapped. So let's just Sajiri Refuge, gain a life, pass the turn. Opponent. The Loot House. And passes. We draw another land. So let's just Port Town, reveal a plains, pass the turn. We can flash in a Rattle Chains, and then if that goes well, do another colorless land. The only downside of this plan is Lightning Bolt, but I don't think we can do much about it. So let's flash in a Rattle Chains. Hope it doesn't get bolted. Sweet. Then we'll play a Plains, get in for 2. Pass the turn. Now we can flash in Drog Skull Captain if our opponent tries to kill our Rattle Chains. Otherwise, I think we're just going to pass. Ooh, Spell Queller. Well, we just go full-on control mode. Let's get in with Rattle Chains. Prairie Stream, tapped, pass the turn. Opponent, I think they have a bolt or a path or something, but they're hesitant because they know all the tricks we can potentially have. So I think we're just going to Drog Skull Captain for the hexproof. Since our opponent doesn't have more colored mana, seems pretty safe. And, yeah, wow, and another Spell Queller. Well, feeling pretty good about where we're at now. Get in with our spirits. Play a Figure of Destiny. Pass the turn. Yeah, with just one colorless source, it's going to be very difficult for our opponent to get out of that. There's Scalding Tarn, or one colored source, rather. Scalding Tarn, cracked. Well, luckily we have Spell Queller still. And Unsubstantiate. Both good against uncounterable things like Supreme Verdict. Not that our opponent really has the mana. They'd have to Ghost Quarter themselves, which they probably don't want to do. Goes with Serum Visions. Leaves one on top, likely another land. Now let's just level up Figure to a 3/3. Jeez. Well, so many Spell Quellers, which is good. I mean, Spell Quellers seem good in this matchup. So I'm assuming this is like Nahiri, Jeskai, something along those lines, which I think means Dispel, Negates, and Celestial Purge. Go down Figure, go down a couple Vapor Snags, and maybe 2 figures, and try it like that. Yeah, this is another pretty good hand on the draw. Rattle Chains, couple Selfless Spirits for protection. So opponent passes. We will just Prairie Stream, pass the turn. Opponent cracks Flooded Strand. Steam Vents, tapped. What's our opponent have now? Hallowed Fountain, tapped. Alright, we're a little land light. So let's just Island and pass the turn. Try to do the Rattle Chains plan if we don't need to counter something. Island for our opponent. Alright, flash in a Rattle Chains. Is it going to die? Not yet. There's a land. Ooh, just at the right time. Now this hand is looking pretty sweet again. Opponent's going to path our Rattle Chains. I think that's actually fine. Rattle Chains is good, but I also don't mind just getting a land here. And pass the turn. Leave up our Spell Quellers, our Mana Leaks. Opponent has their colored mana this game. Opponent, are they going to play a Nahiri? There's Nahiri. Well, let's Spell Queller Nahiri. Little risky. Mana Leak would get rid of it forever, but this does give us a threat. We draw a tap land. So let's Selfless Spirit. Get in with Spell Queller. Put our opponent down to 17. Play the Refuge. Pass the turn. So we got protection from Bolt, but not from a second path. On the Spell Queller, I mean. Thanks to Selfless Spirit. Because we really don't want our opponent to get a Nahiri. And Mana Leak makes it hard for our opponent to just cast a second Nahiri. Alright, well, let's see if they have a Dispel. Whew! Well, 2 Nahiris down. Unsubstantiate. Well, let's play a second Selfless Spirit. Get in with both. Opponent down to 13. Pass the turn. Timely Reinforcements. Yep. That undoes some of our work, but we're not going to fight over it. We have a pretty fast evasive clock and another spell queller. So let's get in with our flyers. Put our opponent down to 13. Pass turn. Our poor opponent. Nahiri number 3. Spell queller number 2. Oh, so we are working our way through all the Nahiris. I mean, this is basically what our opponent wants. They want Nahiris and removal, and it's just not lining up well with our deck. Spell Queller is quite the magic card, and so is Selfless Spirit. Alright, Lightning Bolt means we sack a Selfless Spirit. We're just not going to let our opponent get into Nahiri. That's not part of our plan. I kind of hope they just untap and go for 4th Nahiri and we Spell Queller it. That would be the time to put your your fist through your monitor. So we get in with everything. And technically, thanks to a Vapor Snag, we have lethal on board next turn. Even without this 3rd Spell Queller. Opponent passes. Well, let's swing with the crew. Opponent drops to 1. And let's pass. I mean, we can, if our opponent taps out or something, we can try to Vapor Snag, but there's not really any reason to rush it. They could kill their own token or something. We're in such a good position, there's no reason to really do anything at the moment. Well, that was quite the performance for the Spirit deck. Alright, well, opponent scoops it up. So, Spirits. I mean, our opponent got mana screwed game 1, but that game 2 performance was about as good as it can go for this deck. Like, just so disruptive, stopping multiple bombs from our opponent, finishing the game with a handful of interaction to keep our opponent from doing anything. So, while the game 1 was more about our opponent's mana situation, our opponent's draw in game 2 was fairly decent, and we still just, I mean, look at all this stuff left over. When you're playing a tempo-y / somewhat controlling deck, the best counter spells are the ones that finish the game in your hand.